I heard you're ready to hire a service manager. Well, congratulations. It's a big step in your business. When you get ready to hire a service manager, it's really important to do it right. What do you do when you need to hire somebody? How do you find the right person? How do you define their role? How do you set them up for success? Those are all questions that come to mind when it comes to hiring a service manager. My name is Adam Hanneman. Welcome to Ramblings of a Geek. I've been in the MSP space for the better part of a couple of decades. I've been a service manager. I've been the first service manager at a couple of different places, and learning kind of the trials and tribulations about how to be a good service manager is a hard thing to do. It's hard to hire for one and do that really well without having a lot of trial and error, right? So we're trying to do this with as minimal trial and error as possible. So that's what today's video is all about. Hiring the service manager the right way, setting them up for success, holding them accountable, and helping them build up their team and kind of getting out of their way. So that's what we're talking about today. This video is going to be a two-parter, right? The first part is all about the owner needing to hire a service manager, holding them accountable, kind of building the rollout. And the second video is going to be all about the service manager, right? What they need to be paying attention to, how they can set their own stuff up for success. There's two sides to this coin, right? The owner needs to understand what's going on and how to support the service manager. And then the service manager needs to have some idea about how to do things in the business and kind of move things forward for the company as well. So this is a two-parter. This is the first part, all about the owner side of the world. When it comes to hiring a service manager, there's a number of questions that come to mind, right? How am I going to set that person up for success in their role? How are they going to learn from others? How am I going to teach them, all of the different pieces that have to go into all these things? And really, how do I make it so that it's worth the time, effort, and money that I'm going to put into this person for me long term, right? Those are questions that are important to answer. And I'm going to try to answer all of those today in our video, because doing this well can be remarkably liberating for the owner of a company, and doing it poorly can be just a giant pain in your ass. So let's do this the right way. So let's head out on the ramble. Now, the first question might be, why would you hire a service manager? Why is this important? Why do you want to do this? Well, the short version of all of this is that if you don't hire a service manager, you really stunt the growth of your company, because as the owner of the company, you only have so much time and energy in any given day, week, or month. Now, when you bring in a service manager, you can offload a lot of the kind of day-to-day people leading of all of the service side of the world, because honestly, leading a service team, especially as you're trying to grow an MSP, is really hard to do. So offloading some of that to a service manager really sets you up for success, gives your business the ability to scale a lot better than it would if you were just trying to do all of the things. It also gets you a second set of eyes on things like paying attention to the finances, paying attention to gross margin, paying attention to client issues, right? All of those things are things that kind of pull at you as the owner of a company, and bringing somebody on board is really beneficial to, again, offloading some of that stuff to them, especially the stuff that it can be quite draining. One of the first questions you might ask as an owner is, when should I hire this person, right? When's the right time? Well, the right time is sort of when it makes sense to you. But the short version of this is, once you have a few techs, you probably need someone to pay attention to stuff, right? As I mentioned in my video about the tiers of techs, usually as an MSP, you hire 3, 4, 5 techs, and you kind of give them a bunch of work to do. And you just kind of give them a pile of stuff, and you say, go do this stuff, right? And for the most part, they're going to do it because you probably hired some level 2 type of engineers where they don't need a ton of supervision. But when you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 techs, you need someone to kind of keep an eye on them. That's not you, right? You have more responsibilities, things like dealing with sales and dealing with account management and trying to kind of move the company forward. And if you try to do all of the things, you're going to really hamstring your ability to grow your company, because you can't scale that way, because you can't scale yourself by cloning. That's not a thing that exists, right? You want to make sure that you are working to build out your team, and the service manager is a core part of it. So when you're in that 4 or 5 tech range, 3, 4, 5, sort of depends on where you kind of are and kind of how quickly you want to kind of step away from it. That's about the right time to start thinking about bringing on a service manager, because ultimately they're going to be the person that's going to help you step further and further away from the tech. Now, I know that most of us as business owners here in the MSP space love the idea of being technical for a long time, because that's typically where we started from. We were typically a great tech that decided to start a business, and now we're learning the business side of the world, and that's a thing where we need to be. But the reality is, you don't need to do all of the password resets, don't need to pay attention to all of everything that goes on with all of your different clients. trying to hold on to all of that is just, frankly, in my mind, stupid. It's just too much to keep track of. That's where the service manager comes into play. So usually in that third, fourth, fifth tech, somewhere in there is a pretty good opportunity for you to bring somebody on board to kind of offload some of this stuff. So the next question is, who do you hire? Who do you promote? How do you find this person? What does that look like, right? And it's really important to think about this in a couple different respects. The first piece is you want to find somebody who wants to be a leader, right? You don't just want to promote your best tech into the service manager because they're really good being a tech over here, so they're going to be a great service manager. Those things don't typically work out that way, right? Your best tech that wants to be a tech does not want to lead people and do one-on-ones and performance reviews and pips and all that crap. They don't want to do that. So don't just promote your best tech unless they come to you and say, hey, I know we're looking for a service manager. I would like to do that. I would like to step away from being a technical person. Like, if that's the case, cool. Help them out and work with them on it. But if that's not your staff or not your technicians that are working for you currently, you might need to look outside of your organization. Now, that said, if you have somebody that says, hey, I want to do this, and they want to be a leader, that is a good opportunity for you to talk to them about what it means to be a service manager. And we'll talk a little bit about defining the role here in a few minutes. But the idea here is that you're looking for somebody who wants to be that leader. And if you hire from outside of your company, a couple things you might want to look for. The first thing is someone who's maybe been some sort of a team lead or manager in some sort of technical team lead job before. I think that makes a lot of sense. They don't necessarily need to have been a team lead, especially if you're hiring your first service manager, but it's certainly going to shortcut some of those learning pieces for them. If you're bringing on a brand new engineer that has some service management capabilities or desires, you might want to have them be a technician for you for a little while and kind of groom them into becoming a service manager. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think lots of times what happens is an MSP gets 3 or 4 or 5 techs big, and you probably sort of have some sort of a natural leader, somebody who's just kind of better at that than the others. That might be a good opportunity for you to kind of tap that person on the shoulder and say, what do you think about becoming the manager of the team or team lead? Is that a thing that you want to do, right? Those are things that you can certainly do, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, if they say no, right, then you got to go find somebody else. But that's not a bad way of looking at it either. You hired a service manager. How do you get them trained up? How do you get them the resources they need? How do you hold them accountable? Those kinds of things then become a very much the next question. And a lot of times, a couple of things come into play, right? When I was very first brought into the service manager role, that was not a thing I had done before, right? It was a brand new thing, and I was introduced to peer groups, right? So, in some cases, all roads lead back to peer groups. I think there's plenty of opportunities for you to find some peer groups. I'll drop a link below for the PAX 8 peer groups because that's just happens to be what I do for my day job, and I run the program. But when I was brought into the very first peer group, I learned a ton from that group. I learned a lot about how to be a good service manager. I learned a lot about what the role really should be, right? Especially when you are the first service manager at any organization and the owner is wearing multiple different hats. They don't necessarily know what a good service manager is. And so they're sort of figuring it out as you go. Well, the peer groups really helped me define what good was and help me kind of coach the ownership of my organization to what I should be held accountable for and what we need to do to kind of move the business forward from my perspective as the service manager. And so you want to put your service manager in front of a number of different opportunities. And so there's also some classes out there that might make sense as well, and I'll link those below as well. But the short version is you want to put them in the space where they can learn from others. Put them in the space where they can learn from people who have been there, done that. Obviously, some of my videos might help them as well. But ultimately, you want to make sure that they're able to learn about the role as they go. You're not going to expect them to just have this mastered in the first week, right? This isn't the thing, especially when this is your first one. You're not going to get this dialed in on the first week. The second piece here is you want to define what success looks like for them in their role, right? What does it look like, right? Does it mean that your CSATs are better than they were? Does that mean that you implement a CSAT process? Maybe you don't even have one, right? Does that mean that you're going to move your service gross margin up or your W-2 multiplier up? Do you even know what those things are? Do you have access to those as an owner? Do you know how to make the calculations? Can you give them access? There's a bunch of different things that happen to go into that. And so one of the things I think you need to do as an owner is kind of define what the role is going to look like in a best case scenario, and understand that you might not get it right the first time around and that you might need to modify it as you go. Define the role, iterate on the role, learn from the mistakes that you are inevitably going to make, right? And make sure that they know they're responsible for a few things. In my world, if I'm going to hire my very first service manager, I want them to be responsible for a couple different things. The first thing is I want them to be responsible for making sure that the service desk is properly staffed, right? They're making sure that you have enough people in each of the different roles and that you're not letting 5 people take vacation at once, right? That's the first thing, right? It's just the kind of common run the help desk side of the world. The second thing is you want to make sure that they're doing one-on-ones and having performance review conversations with their people, and like being the manager, being the leader within the organization on a regular basis, right? Having weekly or bi-weekly one-on-ones and making sure that those things are happening, and having those career conversations and kind of helping the team develop their career as they go as well. Like those things are really important, and it's important that you're paying attention to those things. The third thing is I really want to see that the service manager is accountable to customer satisfaction. And if you don't happen to have a CSAT tool, then go get a CSAT tool and put this person in charge of that. Make sure that you get a baseline and that they're working to improve it as you go, improve the processes as far as that's concerned, and address the things that don't go perfectly well, because not everything is going to go perfectly. The next thing is I'm looking for some accountability to some ticket related metrics, right? This is like time per ticket, tickets per endpoint, billable time, those kinds of things. And there needs to be some level of an agreement between you and your service manager. Now, if I think about this from a owner hiring my first service manager, I'm going to probably keep it for the basic, right? I want to make sure that the service manager is managing the kill rate properly, because that's a really easy one to understand. And I'll link up above to my service metrics video. And you want to make sure that the service manager is hitting as best as you can on either SLAs or time per tickets, something like that, to make sure that you're like not grinding away at things, and making sure things are being resolved in an appropriate amount of time. If you don't have the metrics for that currently, then this might be time to level that up and give them the agency to kind of get those metrics figured out too, right? This isn't you go solve all the problems for them. This is, work it together, help them help themselves, and set up those metrics in a way that you can both be proud of when they inevitably do a good job. One key piece of all of this is you, as the owner of the company, need to have ongoing conversations with this person. You need to have one-on-ones with them as well, as much as they need to have one-on-ones with their team. You need to have reviews with them, and you need to be the person that they can come ask questions to and get help from, and you're not giving them the Heisman all the time, right? You don't want to just keep them at arm's length, but you also don't want to get up in their business either, right? You don't want to be going directly to their techs to say, hey, I need you to take a look at this ticket over here. You take that to the service manager and say, service manager, I need you and your team to solve whatever this issue is. Inevitably, what's going to happen is client's going to call up and they're going to be pissed off about a thing, right? That just happens. You as the owner need to say, client, we got your back. We're going to solve this for you. And we're going to put somebody on it. You don't go directly to the text at that point. You take it to the service manager and you have them work through their text. The minute you drop it right directly on a text desk is the minute that you've now cut your service manager off at the knees from the ability to hold them accountable for things. So you need to work closely with this service manager and frankly have probably more one-on-ones with them than you probably think you need to, at least at first, because you want to make sure you're on the same page, right? You're going to hear me say this over and over again in my videos, is most issues that you have between two different people are differences of expectations, differences of what's going to happen. And when you have that with basically your key secondhand person in your organization, that's a problem. So as the owner, you want to make sure you're working with them to make sure that you are on the same page as often as possible. Bringing a service manager in can be huge for your business. It can free you up as the owner to work on things that are frankly more important than tracking, timesheets and those kinds of things, right? It's a really important thing to do well and to get right and to iterate, because you're probably not going to have everything perfectly dialed in the first time. So don't worry about that. Bring in the person that you think is the right fit for the role and work to level them up as you kind of work together. And when you do this well, this allows you to scale your company much faster than you would have had you try to do everything on your own. If you're looking for a video to understand how the owner's role shifts as your company grows, that video will be up here. And if you're looking for a video for how your team morphs and shifts, that video will be up here. Thanks for coming on this ramble with me, and hope to see you on the next one.